I'm certified behavior analyst. I've been working for the Washington County School District preschools since 2012, and I've really enjoyed that. And I've taught children with a variety of disabilities. So I've had a lot of different experiences, and I hope that some of the things I've learned you'll find helpful. So I thought maybe I could get to know you guys a little bit better. How many of you are from this area? Raise your hand. Thank you. And how many of you are in a private preschool? Like you own a preschool or daycare? Okay. How many are in like the public preschool situation? Cool, thank you. So we have a good mix here. So again, our focus today is on keeping our behavior solutions simple and positive. And we have a large mixture of children that we work with. And so we want to start by understanding a little bit about the children that we may see in our classrooms. And one of the big topics that, as I'm sure you all know, that has been going around is about trauma. And so let's start with talking about trauma a little bit and how that affects our children. I was reading this book a while back, Trauma in Young Children, and I was counting how many different factors and causes can go into trauma. And to my count, I counted 23. And that included abuse, neglect, grief, family stress, toxic situations, etc. And one thing that I was struck when I was reading through this was that some trauma will be hidden trauma. Like we may never know what kind of trauma our child has gone through, the ones that we're working with. Sometimes you'll go like half a school year before a family opens up and said, we've been through this, and sometimes they might not ever open up to you about that. So we want to make sure that all our behavior solutions keep that in mind, that some of our kiddos might be going through some really hard times. So why mention trauma? Well, I love this quote from that book. Children who are in survival mode can be aggressive, rude, uncooperative, and inattentive. And until you help children feel calm and safe and learn how to self-regulate, you cannot focus on other kinds of learning. And so that's just something we want to talk about today. So I made a list of other things besides trauma that could affect our children. And this is just all that I could come up with. And I'm sure that there's a whole bunch more. And so it's quite an extensive list if you think about all the different things that could be going on in your classroom with 12 or 16 students. So we have different temperaments. And of course, we have some people coming from poverty situations, so that might be affecting their behaviors. Exposure to violence. There's just so many things to keep in mind, but it's overwhelming when you start thinking about it. And it can be overwhelming because it's a lot of variables. So how do you keep up with all of that, right? Like you have all these kids with all these different things going on, and how can you work with them? So because it's overwhelming, and what I have found helpful to me working with all these different situations is that I don't focus on the things that I can't control. So there's some things that I just can't control what's happening in their lives, but there's some things that I can control within my classroom, and that is the learning environment, what skills we teach, and how we teach them, and how we react to challenging behaviors. So let's talk a little bit about the learning environment. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, and I'm just going to kind of fly by. There are some links and some resources for you, and I'll have my email at the end of my presentation. So if you want those links, I can email them out to you. Just send me a little email. All right, so classroom management. We all know how important classroom management is, and I have some resources here, but we're not going to focus on this at all today. And also knowing the developmental milestones. So very important, because without understanding these, we might just assume that the child is doing it to be disrespectful, rude, or naughty. If we don't have a true understanding of what their level is and what they're capable of doing. And this is a little list that I compiled through the years that has been really helpful to me. And I find that if I do this from the get-go and find out these things at the beginning, it just really helps that when those challenging situations come up, that I kind of have a better understanding of the situation. So knowing the skill level of our student, if there's a medical history, if it's appropriate for you to know that, or if there's a history of trauma, if it's appropriate to know that. If there's any cultural differences that you might need to be mindful of, if there's any triggers to mitigate, and believe me, when you ask parents, they can tell you what the triggers are. So that's always very helpful, that conversation with parents ahead of time. Understanding what the child needs, wants, what the child is interested in, and how the child communicates. And also that there are some reasons for behavior, and those have been talked about in several different sessions. You could read more if you want to know more about those functions of behavior. The new LRBI manual is out from the state, and there's a link for that there. But simply put, just overall in general about behavior, it basically boils down to trying to get something you want or need, or trying to escape or terminate or avoid something that you don't like. That's just basically what it all boils down to. And we all kind of have those situations where we just want to get rid of something, or we want something and we want to find a way to get it. So the first thing to think of is creating that environment of safety and connection. So I've really tried to focus that on this year in my classroom, and we've talked with my helpers, my teacher helpers, and we really tried to discuss how we can keep our environment safe this year. So we want to be gentle with our corrections. These are some things that we have talked about, and use guidance and support and encouragement. Lots of positive reinforcement through the day, have that routine structure and predictability in place. And the environment should be happy and relaxed and engaged, one in which the students will feel safe and in control. And I don't just want that for the students, I want that for my staff as well. I want us all to feel happy, relaxed, and engaged at preschool. And so sometimes that's hard to remember when all of a sudden there's all this chaos going on, but hopefully some of the things we'll talk about will help keep that atmosphere in your classroom. These are just some of my favorite quotes that I've collected through the years. And I think the one that I think we'll just focus on two today, which is on the bottom left, which says, if we establish trust, engagement, authenticity, and agency, then cooperation and shared experiences follow. And then the one on the bottom, if you're having trouble with a student, go back to the relationship. And that's, to me, what it seems like boils down to if I'm having trouble with a student. So let's talk about relationship building. I'm sure you guys know how to build rapport with your students, but some things that, keep in mind is being able to call their name, use their name when you're talking to them, actively listen to them, ask questions to them, and also reserve judgments when they're talking with you. So there's something called non-contingent reinforcement. And basically that is where the child gets reinforcement for not having to do anything to earn it, so to speak. And usually it works really well with children who are seeking that attention. So some examples of non-contingent reinforcement in a classroom. The child gets greeted warmly every day at the door, regardless of how they are coming in. The child gets access to centers, recess, and snack times each day, regardless of any of their inappropriate behaviors that they've exhibited. Letting the child sit next to you each day at story or circle time, regardless of how they behaved. Having a time set each day for quality one-to-one time, so maybe like a time in with teacher. Every student through the week gets at least one time in with their teacher. And giving a child a little attention every so many minutes, regardless of their behavior. So those are some just ideas to think about. But there's also something called contingent reinforcement, and that is where so let's back up, I'm sorry. Positive reinforcement is when the consequence of the behavior that happens either increases or maintains that behavior if it happens again in the future. And so we want to use contingent reinforcement to help kind of increase the behaviors that we want to see happen in the classroom. And so another way to think of it is it's a pleasant consequence. So their actions get a pleasant consequence. So if they clean up the toys, they get, oh, high five, Johnny, you cleaned the toys. That something pleasant happens because you're hoping that he'll want to repeat that action in the future. So there's different ways that you can use positive reinforcement. So this is from the USBE's paraeducator manual on the top. And so giving specific verbal praise or social praise, for example, a high five or a thumbs up. So Johnny, I know how hard how you walked. I liked how you walked to the table. Give me a high five. Way to go, Johnny. That's an example. Or giving access to motivating items or activities. For example, thanks for raising your hand. You get to go spin the wheel now, or something like that. So my goal this year has been trying to make reinforcement a little bit more natural. And so I really liked what Camilleri and Hanley said about trying to making that more natural. And so one thing you can do is like give access to the next activity or area. So some examples would be, nice cleaning up, Sarah, you get to go to centers now. Or nice waiting in line, Jack, it's your turn now. Or great walking to the table, would you like to hand out the crayons? So it's something natural that's already happening within the day. Or you can add something more or something new to the activity that you're already doing. So I see a lot of examples here, but I'll just say a couple. For like a child who's playing with the cars and you've called their name and they look up at you, oh, nice looking at me. Would you like another car? So you're adding something to the activity that they like and they're already doing. Or for a child drawing a picture, nice sharing your crayons, Johnny. Would you like some glitter or scissors to go with that? So you're just adding to it. And so when it's a new skill, you want to do a lot more of reinforcement as they're learning it. And then you just kind of back off on the amount of reinforcement as it's become learned. But we never completely stop reinforcement. All right. So the main goal of any academic program, according to Barbara, is a willing and happy learner. And I've always loved that. She said that in 2007, and I've just had that every year. I just kind of read that, and it's my goal to have that happy and willing learner. But how do we get that? So how can we tell when a child is happy and willing to learn, or they're giving their assent to work with you? Well, you can see maybe they have a smiling face. Any other ideas? How do you know when a child wants to work with you? Yes.
In my class, the eyes are watching teacher, ears are listening to teacher, and the bodies are calm, not twirling around in circles.
Okay, so she said eyes are watching, ears are listening, and their bodies aren't twirling around. So they're being attentive. Anybody else? Okay. How can we tell when a child is not willing to learn from you and they're not giving assent to work with you? Any ideas what that might look like? Yes. Twirling around. Yeah. Sometimes we see some of this stuff where they're trying to run away, or they're putting their hands over their head, or they don't want to work with you for whatever reason. And so let's talk about what to do when a child is not ready to learn. So one of the main things that I have appreciated was the statement that leaving means something important is missing or something aversive is present. And so if a child's leaving the activity, try to think about, oh, what is missing from this that child wants? Or is something aversive about this activity that the child doesn't want to do? So some things to ask yourself: what is the learner responding to? Why don't they want to participate? Is the learning environment not fun? Has the learner been sitting too long? Is the task too hard? Do you need to work on building rapport? So it's just about stopping for a moment and thinking about what's going on. So a few options to gain child's assent to work with you. And there's more than these. These are just a few that I thought of. Make sure their activities are engaging by adding music or props or movement or anything along those lines. Being a salesman, I find myself being a salesman a lot. Instead of saying like, oh, today we're going to learn the letter A, I say like, today we're going to learn the letter A and we get to use glue and glitter and it's going to be so much fun, you know? So you're trying to sell your what you're going to do. Also adding the child's interest to your activity. So being aware of what their interests are. So if you have a child who really likes dinosaurs, how can you incorporate dinosaurs into your activity? Can they stomp the dinosaurs on the squares, or can they, the dinosaur will roar and everybody will roar when we get the right answer or something like that. And then also you can allow the child to choose what to work for. So you can say, okay, we're going to do a little work. What do you want to work for? Oh, I want to go play with blocks. Okay, we can do that. Let's do this first. So if the child runs off, some things that you can do, these are options, is to use the class schedule to remind, oh, remember, Johnny, we're over at circle time right now. See, it's on our schedule. It says it's circle time. Where should we be? We're at circle time. Or you can use that first then language, which I think was explained really well in that last presentation. First, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. Sometimes you can even swap it and say, oh, remember, we're going to go outside and we're going to play bubbles. Well, first we need to put our shoes on. So I told the then first and before the first part. So you can allow the child to bring what interests him or her to the activity. So if they run off and you follow them over and you see that they're playing with something, you can say, hey, you know what, that looks like fun. You're right. Let's bring it back to the table. And then you can bring it back to the table. And then you can either, let them play with that for a little bit before you get your activity started, or you can find a way to incorporate that, or you can have him show all his friends that to just get them back to the table. And those are nice strategies, but one thing that a friend of mine said was ask yourself at least 3 whys. Okay, Johnny ran off away from the table. Well, why? Well, Johnny wanted to have the truck. Well, why did he want the truck? Well, he was bored at the table. Why was he bored at the table? Well, I wasn't really prepared and my pacing wasn't going very well. And you can kind of dig a little deeper and see why things are happening. And then also to look at both what the child is running towards and what the child is running away from. That always helps when I'm trying to solve what's going on. Okay, so this is what kind of skills we teach. And I found it very helpful if from very first day one, that the child knows how to appropriately ask for items or activities. So whether in your class, if that's raising their hand or however that looks, but in that classroom environment, what is appropriate way for them to ask for items or activities, or how to ask for help, or how to ask for a break. I found that if we teach those right from the very beginning, then that helps ease a lot of the frustrations in the classroom that I've had. And there's wonderful ways to teach those social emotional skills. And one of my favorite things is from our lifelong learning strategies and activities from the state. I find myself in the core standards all the time, and I hope you guys are using them and utilizing them. The NCPMI also has some social skills lessons that they can do. And then there's also a free preschool life skills RTI curriculum from Dr. Hanley's website. And there's the links there for that in case you need those. And we also want to think about teaching and reinforcing a replacement behavior. So first think, is this a can't do or is it a won't do? And so if it's a can't do, teach the skill and just try and break that down into smaller steps if you have to. And then if it's a won't do, find out why they won't do it and try to meet that need in the activity you're giving. Okay, so the following strategies are my favorite ways to teach these skills. And the first one is pre-teach and pre-correction. I'm sure a lot of you are doing this, and that's teaching the skill before you expect the behavior to happen. So a good example would be teaching how to do a fire drill before the fire drill actually happens. And I'm sure you've done that where, okay, we're going to practice having a fire drill. When we hear a bell, we're going to line up, and then you practice it all. And then when it happens, they kind of are already familiar with happens. Well, that can work also with behaviors. So I had a little boy who I knew that was going to, this was many years ago, probably just he liked such routine and structure that the Halloween parade I knew was just going to really set him off. We were going to go outside and parade around in front of the parents. And so I thought the day before and the morning of, we would just practice. We all lined up and I got in front and I said, hey, everybody, we're going to go outside and there's going to be parents out there and we're going to walk around one time and then we're going to come back in the classroom and we're going to go back to what we're doing. And so we practiced that. And then we did that the following morning and he did it like a champ. He went out there, he wasn't nervous at all. And he did the whole thing and came back in. And I was so proud of him. So there's a checklist available for helping with pre-teaching, and I have the link there. And again, if you want that, feel free to email me and I can send you these. Also giving those clear, simple directions. So some reasons for not following an instruction could be because the child doesn't know how to perform the task. Maybe there's a skill deficit there that hasn't been taught, or maybe the instructions aren't clear, or that the child hasn't learned yet that cooperation leads to better outcomes. And so I'm not going to focus on giving clear directions. There's a nice handout here that is for free if anybody wants to have that. Another thing is to share control and be sure to offer choices all day long. I had a friend once who said that you need to be like Sam I Am, just all day long. Do you want green? Do you want red? Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want this? So you're just offering choices so they feel like they have some control of what's going on. And then you can also have the open-ended choices as well, not just what we're doing. And also we want to allow for some negotiation in some situations where negotiation is feasible. So we want to be flexible. One of my favorite strategies is behavior momentum, and it's basically easy, easy, hard. And so that's when you give an easy demand, which is something that you know the child's going to be able to do and want to do. You give some reinforcement, then another easy demand, give some reinforcement, and then you give a harder demand, something that the child is less likely to do. So like maybe we're at circle time, we're like, all right, clap your hands, nice job. Okay, stomp your feet, nice job. Okay, sit down. And then they sit down. They've got the momentum going and they just don't realize that you've slipped in your real instruction, which was to please sit at circle. You've just slipped that in there. And so it's just a fun way to do it. This is another one of my favorite things. It's called shaping. I don't know how many are familiar with that strategy, but basically shaping is a process where you kind of accept approximations and the learning target changes over time. So you think about a baby learning how to walk, right? So maybe at first dad's got his hand and he's walking the baby and everybody's so excited. Wow, look at you, you're walking. And then maybe they take a couple steps and they fall, wow, look at that, you're walking, and then the target keeps learning, right? Keeps moving. So then they're walking on their own. Wow, you're walking. And then they're running, So that's just the way shaping works, is they're getting reinforcement as they make those. The target is here and the little steps are here. They're getting reinforcement along the way. So what does that look like in the classroom? So for me, one time, many years ago, I had a little child who did not want to go into the classroom at all or go to circle time at all. And so I was helping another teacher at the time. And I found out that this little boy loves Minecraft. So I was like, hey, bud, let's go in and let's draw some pictures about Minecraft. Come on. So we went to the very back of the room where the art table was, and we started drawing pictures of Minecraft. And I was going to accept that for that day. I wanted him eventually to be at the circle, but for that day, the fact that we were in the room at all was just perfect. And so the next day I kind of strategically upped the ante. I said, let's go in and draw. And we moved to the table closer to the rug where the kids were. So we were drawing pictures of Minecraft. And the next day I added another kid who came over and came out with him, because I knew that if he had a friend, that might make it a little better. And so the friend came out and said, hey, come with me, let's draw Minecraft, again to a table closer to the rug. So they were doing Minecraft all through circle time. And then finally I said, hey, let's go sit with your picture at the rug. And he didn't want to go to the rug, so I put a chair there, and we sat with his picture at the chair at the rug. And eventually we got him to sit at the rug. So you can see it's not like an instant process, but it's a gradual process, and you're just moving that target, and he's able to do what he was asked to do. I'm just going to skip a little bit of this. We'll just talk about differential reinforcement. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but differential reinforcement is where you're going to give like a little bit of attention or a little bit of something for the behavior that's not what you want, and then give a lot for the behavior that you want. So an example would be if the child is yelling out at class and you want them to raise their hand, right? And so they're yelling, teacher, 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 as sometimes they do. And you say, hey, bud, remember, raise your hand. So that was your little bit of attention. And then you go back to what you're doing. And then as soon as that child raises their hand, you give them their full on attention. Hey, thanks for raising your hand. That's awesome. What do you want to say? So that it can be used in different situations. Here's a wonderful article on using guidance. And I'm going to let you guys look at that another time. This is called errorless learning. And errorless learning is basically not letting the child make a mistake to begin with. So you're going to give them the prompt right away. And so an example of what that would be, we have this wall whiteboard, and we have this opening circle time activity that the kids get to, like, it has a triangle at the top, and then the kids have to find the triangle in 3 options at the bottom. So if it's a brand new thing and I'm introducing triangle for the first time and the child gets called on to come on up, I'm just going to kind of stand by or lightly touch where the triangle is. So I'm going to give them that prompt to begin with so that they don't make that mistake right off the bat. So, wow, you found triangle, good job. And then pretty soon you just fade that off and they're finding triangle on their own. And then this is just one of my favorite things, is just to try to find something funny in the moment, whatever stressful moment you might be having, because laughter just changes everything. It reduces stress, it lowers blood pressure, it helps the body fight disease, it releases endorphins to the brain, and it helps connect each other. So if you can find something funny going on in the middle of the chaos, that it just changes the whole situation. All right, so now we're going to get to the part that maybe we're most interested in. So I like this quote by Schramm. It says, the correct approach for any child is always the one that works best with the fewest negative side effects and use the least restrictive procedure possible. So we want to try and keep it positive. So this is some of the things that I consider first when something's going awry. Could this be medical? You know, do I know if the child's on allergy medicine is making him drowsy, or do I know if he has a headache, or mom, I had a child once who had seizures and he had come to school after he had a seizure. So it's medical. I'm going to react differently to that situation than I would maybe other things. Check if it's biological. Are they hungry, thirsty, tired, need a diaper change? Those kind of things. Could it be the time of day, or could it be a sensory issue? Is it too loud in the room or too quiet? Could it be from a setting event? So like a long bus ride. I have this one boy who rides the bus quite a long time and then comes to school and he is ramped up. He is ready to go. And so we know that we just need to do a lot of jumping jacks and all sorts of things right when he gets there to help him, because he's been sitting for a long time. And could it also be from a mental health issue or a cognitive delay? So if it's any of these things, then try to ease off your demands and provide that non-contingent reinforcement, and also contingent reinforcement, but make it easier for them, and give extra prompts. So just basically to prevent behaviors, you need to raise your reinforcement or lower your demands. So we're not making it easier in a way that we're expecting them never to achieve anything. So I don't want that to be the thing. But in these situations, when you have a tired child or something like this, kind of back off a little bit and try and make things easier for him, as I'm sure you guys do. Okay, so the rest of the slides from this presentation is just a general guideline of how I do things. And I've kind of just been putting this together through the years in a way that works logically for me. And every step in this process could end the situation. And so I would just stop and at that and just go back to what we're doing. And so this is my references. It's a combination of a whole bunch of different things, but it's very important if you're working with a school district to always follow their guidelines and their policies, and also consult the state of Utah's LRBI manual first. So this is just what works for me. And if it helps you too, that would be great. So we want to talk about the escalation cycle, and the new LRBI has a really great chart and with step-by-step on those cycles, on what to do with that cycle. And so sometimes, as you know, it's like a slow escalation, right? So the child's maybe having a good day, and then an hour later, it's starting to get a little fussy or whatever. And then by the end of the day, the child's up here. But sometimes it can go from 0 to 60, just like this, right? You don't even have time to, whoa, what happened here? That child was fine, and now he's clear up here. And so we just want to try and stop the train at the precursor stages. So, but if we know kind of what the precursors are to that behavior, so we know that before Johnny lunges for someone, he usually looks at them and they looks at him again, and you can just tell he's going to lunge for him. So we'd like to stop it before he lunges, right? Just at that precursor stage. And be prepared to act at that point. So some of the things we're going to talk about today are hopefully keeping in mind that trauma sensitive and also sensitive to the different needs in our classrooms. And we'll go there. So step one for me is always to believe the child, and believe the child that it's their experience. And so if he says, I don't like it, I believe he doesn't like it, right? There's several times I've heard people say, oh, no, you'll like it. It's okay. You know, that kind of thing. And I've done that too. But I just have to stop myself and say, okay, he's telling me he doesn't like it. I wonder why he doesn't like it. That's how he feels. And that's how he's viewing the situation. So that's just a reminder to me. I would say, oh, believe what they're saying. And then my second step is always to use an empathetic statement. So a few examples, oh, I can see that you're feeling angry, or it's okay to feel upset. Something that validates how that child feels. I never want to be in a situation where I'm telling the child that what he feels is wrong or that the child is wrong. I want them to know that the way they feel is important and that's just how they feel. And that I notice it and I understand what they're feeling. And just because we give an empathetic statement doesn't mean that we 100% agree with how they feel, because you might be like, why is he feeling so upset about this? But just validating that that's how their experience is. Okay, so the next step for me, I believe the child, I've given my empathetic statement, and I do that in every single case. The next step is kind of like a two-choice thing. How do I encourage them to persist and complete the task and show some resilience and get on through, or am I going to stop and end the trigger? And it's kind of going to be different for every child, and it's going to be different for almost every situation. You know your children that you work with, and you know how far, when it's going to be acceptable or not. So the first, some options for encouraging persistence is just encouraging a little bit more effort. You got this. You can do it. I know you can do it. Try again. You got this. And you can break it down into smaller steps if you need to. So like, let's say a smaller step for cleaning up. Let's say a child walks in and you say, oh, we need to clean up all the toys that they had thrown on the floor or whatever. And there's a whole bunch of them. That is so overwhelming. There's like 20 toys and they have to clean up. You can just maybe focus the child in on one part of that toy, or say, you know what, let's start by putting the ball in the bucket. That's a little bit easier of a demand than clean up all these toys. So just by helping them focus on, instead of, oh my gosh, I got all this, to just one little part of it, that helps ease the situation. Offering choices. I know you can do it. Do you want the blue one or the green one first? Or offering other kind of choices, just letting them know that you feel like they can do it. Help guiding them through some problem solving. Again, that article on guidance is really great. Or you can offer full prompting support. So it's okay, I can help you. Look, let's do it together. I'll help you. And then we be sure to praise the child's next little bit of effort. And if the child isn't resisting anymore, we can continue the lesson and keep going. But if you see that it's starting to escalate things further than manageable, then I would stop what I was doing. I would just stop the instruction and either move on to something else or move on to a different part of the activity, because we're not really giving up on that skill. We're just taking a break from it and reevaluating, okay, what is it about that escalated this child? So after you've had time to reflect on it, and that could even be like 5 minutes later, you're thinking while you're going and you've reflected and now you're going to go back and try it again, or you can do it later on in the day or the next day. You can change something in your environment or your approach. You can break down the skill, or you teach those prerequisite skills that may be needed for that child. So the other option then is, if they're starting to really escalate, is that instruction or trigger removal. So if the child is in distress, just stop your instruction or remove your trigger and help the child calm down. And some of those calm down things that were mentioned in the previous session, deep breathing and co-regulating, offering the cozy corner if they would like it, counting to 5, have them blow their hot chocolate, blowing. Using those 5 senses. Oh, I can see this, or I can hear this. Anything that would help them to calm down. But we also want to remember while we're doing that the fewer words, the better. Because if you've ever been upset and somebody just keeps talking, it just ramps you up, right? So just the fewer the words, the better. And the fewer options is always the best approach. So after the child is calm, you can move on to the next instruction or activity, and you can go back to the skill again when you've decided, when you've reflected on it and decide what change or approach you might need to use. Okay, so now let's talk about if it's gone into full-on meltdown mode, or if they're in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. This works. I found that this process works as well for that. So take time a moment to calm yourself. Sometimes when we're in that stressful situation, your muscles tense and you don't even realize it. So take time to kind of relax your muscles, relax your facial features, take some deep breaths, and help keep yourself calm so that you don't escalate as well. And then I try to notice my thoughts, and I try to change them if I need to. So if I find myself thinking, Johnny does this every single day, I can't believe it, I change that to be, Johnny's feeling some strong emotions at this time. I wonder how I can help him be calm and experience my calm. So I try to change that. And then giving off some signals of safety. So some of those safety signals might be that you're not towering over them. You don't have your arms crossed. You're just kind of maybe getting down to their level. You've slowed down your breathing. You're giving them space, but not too much space. You're not invading them space at the same time. Just saying, hey, I got this. I'm with you. I hear you. I see you. I understand what's going on. And then try to change what you can in the environment. So maybe if the environment is too loud, you can or there's too much visual clutter, you can kind of just dim the lights a little bit or make it a little calmer in the environment itself. And then you give that empathetic statement, and then give a supporting statement. So it's like, wow, I see you're feeling so mad. I'm here for you if you need me. And then you just wait, you just stop talking and wait, and you're just being calm, and you're breathing, and you're co-regulating, and just giving them a chance to calm down. And then you can do something that is called offering mini bids. And so that is like trying to see if they'll let you come nearer. So if the child's over here just in that meltdown mode, and I guess we should stop and talk about what that is. There's a difference between having a tantrum and a meltdown, as I'm sure as I'm sure you know. Tantrum is more when they're in control of their actions, and that meltdown is when the amygdala has taken over. It's kind of called the amygdala hijack, where it's just taken over and they just can't reason or think or anything. So that's what we're talking about here. So we're trying to offer maybe some mini bids where the child is maybe over here and you're like trying to see if he'll let you come a little closer, or if he'll let you sit next to him, or maybe if he'll allow any touch. If not, just remove your hand and just keep breathing and relaxing, staying relaxed next to the child. And then I like to offer the child an out. So some of the outs that have worked for me is like, they're starting to calm down and be like, oh man, I see that your nose is running. Should we go get a tissue? And usually that does it right there. They don't like the feel of it and they'll just jump up and go with me to go to get a tissue. Or I'll be like, oh man, because if they were wiping their nose, oh, you got that on your hands. Should we go clean your hands? So offering them some sort of out of the situation. And then allowing them to process. So while you're doing that is just still remaining quiet and just like, hey, come on, let's go and take care of that. And then we slowly start going verbal again. And most likely with a true meltdown, they'll probably be exhausted after that. So we want to remember to keep our demands low after that and just recognize that they're feeling exhausted. And then later take some time to reflect so you can get to that why. Why did that happen? So responding to the dangerous problem behaviors. So dangerous for this presentation refers to aggression, self-injury, or property destruction. So those are like some pretty intense, dangerous situations that if you find yourself in it, you just want to do an emergency pull. And so districts usually have a policy for what to do or some training on what to do in those situations. So always follow your district's policy. But if you're in a situation where maybe you're not working for a district or you don't know what to do, consider Dr. Hanley's process of just giving an immediate empathetic response and just providing access to everything they want. And then don't give any other instructions or demands until the child has an extended period of happy, relaxed, and engaged. And then you can reflect on what happened and change something for next time. So you can change by giving extra prompts or breaking down the skill, or maybe doing it in a different area of the room or something. So depending on the situation, you just kind of look at it and think about, okay, how am I going to do this for next time? But just this is just for safety. He says it's not a lifestyle, it's just temporary. So you're just going to give them everything they want so that they can calm down, and then you can reassess and figure out how to approach it a different way. Now, if it's a very serious recurring behavior, like especially with self-injury, please get some help with that. Don't ever try to tackle that yourself. And a plan can be made to help with that. Okay, so I have some final thoughts here, and I have a little bit of time left. And so let's talk about the final thoughts for a moment, and then we can talk about if there's any questions. So I really am into the proactive behaviors. The more we do up front, and getting our classroom ready and our routines ready, those things really help mitigate. So we want to spend 95% of our time preventing the problem behavior. And this can be done through building those relationships of trust and truly understanding the different skill levels and needs of the children and their needs and their wants, and also by providing guidance, care, and support. And so I really like this quote here. It says, "Ours is not to dominate, but to de-escalate, or better yet, prevent escalation in the first place. Ours is not to coerce, but to listen, learn, guide, and coach. Ours is not to redirect, restrain, or merely manage and modify. Ours is to understand, share, and shape. Ours is to prioritize safety, rapport, and the televisibility of what we do of all else. We have proven that meaningful outcomes can follow when we prioritize these things." So those are some things that I try to I read that quite a bit, actually, at least once a week. I go back to reading what that is and to help remind myself. These are my references. But I would like to, is there anything anybody had any questions about or would like to go back to? Okay, thank you. So let's just go back on one of the things that I skipped pretty quick. Let's talk about some of those directions. So one of the things I've found helpful about giving directions and following instructions are, again, making sure that the directions are clear and concise, but also making sure that we are able to get their attention first. So that's always a top priority for me, is to make sure I have the child's full attention before I give the direction, and then I'm in close proximity and not yelling across the room, "Hey, Johnny, do this." He's probably not going to listen to me. But some of the fun things that we can try is to make it more fun is to use a silly voice or say it in a robotic way, something that just catches their attention. And then we also want to make sure that we're telling them what we want to have done and not what they don't want to do. So you'd say, use your walking feet instead of don't walk. So those kind of things are very helpful. And then one of the things thinking about assent is that when we're talking about assent, we are talking about having that learner be willing to work with us. And so it's a very nuanced thing while you're working with them to know when you're starting to lose their attention and when they're starting to lose interest. And so some of the things you can do is, if you know that some of your students, they only last 2 minutes of attention, is just in the back of your head, okay, every 2 minutes, I'm going to change something about my activity that I'm doing, or I'm going to add in a break. Oh, we've been working so hard, let's stand up and stretch. Or just little things like that. Just know that every so often I'm going to have to change something about what I'm doing. And getting that child's assent to work with you isn't like just telling, how can I phrase this? It's not like having them be in total control of the situation, like we're just going to do whatever willy-nilly. You really are still in control. You're trying to see what motivates them. You're trying to see how to use that motivation in what you're doing. So okay, so let's get there. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Yes, thank you.
So I have parents in my classroom that work with me, and some of them are really great with behavior management. Others, they're very reluctant, and they're doing things that I don't want done in the classroom, but I don't want to step in and usurp their authority. So what are your thoughts on that? And I'm going to take this back and train them what I want, but what are your thoughts like in the moment?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. So if you hadn't heard the question, it was that she has some people that she works with who are not necessarily addressing behavior the way she wants to address them, but in the moment she doesn't want to usurp their authority. Am I correct? Yeah. So I understand that completely. So one thing that I've done in the past that has worked well, that is trying to do it before getting into the moment, is role playing. And so at our Friday meeting, I'll say, okay, I'm going to be the teacher and you're going to be the student and you're going to act silly or whatever the issue is. And I'll show you what I'm going to do. And then I get to be the student and you get to be the teacher. And let's practice what that looks like. And sometimes sometimes I found with some paras is that no matter how much you verbally tell them, in the moment, it just kind of goes all out the window and they resort to what they've already done in the past. And so sometimes by rehearsing that and just practicing it together and rehearsing it more than one time, maybe every Friday you're going to practice different things, that eventually it gets to be like the muscle memory where it's just the automatic response. Is that helpful? Oh, yeah. Anybody else? Okay, well, I just really want to thank you guys for being here on a Friday afternoon, late at the end of the day. And I hope that some of these strategies you'll find useful in your classrooms. And I'm grateful that you came. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Now we're going to have the drawings for the prizes here in the auditorium at 5:15. But unlike the first one where we just like took a list of everybody and just randomized and selected, we're actually going to do the tickets because that's kind of fun. So if you can all go up to the registration desk again and get your tickets, give us a few minutes because we got to set up the prizes here for the drawings. But yeah, we'll see you in a few minutes. And it looks like a lot of people left when the weather got bad, and so your chances of winning are really good. So, or I guess maybe not really good. They're much better. We'll say that. So thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's like there were a lot of people that registered for this. Yeah, it's I'm kind of thinking, there's probably a lot that joined online. Yeah, that's why I was checking to see there was no Q&As.